Woohoo! We finally get to ride the Varg. There are plenty of reviews from a motocross or racing perspective. We want to know if it will suit the everyday dirt rider. As usual, our review will be more critical than most. Unlike some channels, we paid full price for the Varg. We always encourage viewers to be wary of glowing reviews that overlook problems and potential issues. A quick bit of background. I was very sceptical of the Varg at first. They claimed 110 kilogram weight, but it was 118 kilograms in the end. They claimed a battery life of 6 hours with easy trail riding. Theoretically, this is possible, but probably at a walking pace on flat ground. Their marketing department went a bit overboard with statements like, "It proves once and for all that electric power is superior." But recently our Canadian cousins tested the Varg for several days and they were blown away. They knew I was sceptical and said I would be stunned with how good the Varg is. I must admit, they are right. This is a truly impressive dirt bike. And yes, I was blown away. But I still don't think it will suit some riders. More on that later. What did we like? The electric motor? Truly amazing. A small amount of throttle is very gentle for trial style moves, then ridiculous amounts of power when you grab a handful. The power delivery is almost infinitely variable, but the 5 main presets will be fine for most riders. I stayed in the softer setting most of the day and the Varg still rocketed up the steep climbs without breaking a sweat. Some riders say an electric dirt bike will have no soul. I suspect if they gun the motor in the higher power settings, they may change their minds. Traction. We tested the KTM e-ride on this property. The lack of traction control made it almost impossible to ride in slippery terrain or steep loose hill climbs. But there must be some very clever electronics in the Varg. We usually get a lot of wheel spin on these climbs with 2 strokes or 4 strokes, but the rear wheel just kept digging in and gripping. Is it cheating? Maybe. But it's all adjustable so you can back off the settings if you want to make hill climbs harder. There's also a virtual flywheel effect that will be interesting to experiment with. Handling. Excellent. The KYB suspension works really well. Plenty of inline stability at speed, but it feels quite nimble in slower terrain too. Everyone says you don't notice the weight, and I have to agree. Unless you need to lift the Varg out of a hole or rut. Then you notice 118 kilograms weight. However, most of our 2-stroke 300s are about 115 kilos with protective gear fitted. Perhaps a better comparison is with 450 motocross bikes. They are usually 110 kilos with a full tank. But it's interesting to see most motocross riders are also saying they don't notice the extra weight. How did we set up this Varg for enduro riding? When ordering, we specified enduro-style suspension settings, dialed in for our weight. They hit the nail on the head. Ditto for the 18-inch rear wheel and side stand. We opted for the left-hand rear brake, which is absolutely fantastic once you get used to it.
One of the things, of course, with the left-hand brake is being able to use your rear brake when you're turning right. That's bloody awesome.
Then it's just programming the amount of power needed, the power curve, the amount of traction control, and the virtual flywheel effect. You can also adjust the amount of regenerative braking. This property we ride on is very steep, so we run it on maximum regen to recharge the batteries on downhills. Battery life. This is a real point of contention for many riders. It is better than we expected, but no, it doesn't match a tank of fuel. To date, we have just been cruising around on this property with plenty of steep hills, and on average the battery lasts for about 3 hours of riding. Google around and you will see plenty of battery life tests. Most owners are reporting about 2 hours of enduro riding. Experienced motocross riders are achieving about 1 hour on the track. If these figures don't work for you, don't buy the Varg. Range anxiety. Honestly, this shouldn't be a problem. The remaining battery life is clearly indicated on the speedo. And you can create your own reserve. Simply dial in a reduced power mode that will get you back to base when the battery gets to a certain point. Easy peasy. Power settings will help with battery range, of course. Unless you were drag racing or motard racing, I think the 80 horsepower option will just be a gimmick for most riders. Even the stock 60 horsepower Varg has way more power than most dirt riders can handle. This is on par with a 450 motocross bike. If you can ride one of those through the forest and feel you need more power, then sure, order the 80 horsepower Stark Varg. Everyone else, you will probably just kill yourself. Does it need a clutch? Plenty of arguments about this. The traction control is so good, we don't think a clutch is needed in that respect. What about technical moves like big logs? Instead of dropping the clutch, you simply dial in more throttle. Possibly a pro-level hard enduro rider could still use a clutch, but at this stage we think the average dirt rider simply won't need it. But we are keen to report back after a lot more riding. Taddy Plasuziak is racing a Stark in Enduro Cross and says he hasn't needed a clutch as yet. A local Gold Class hard enduro rider owns a Stark and he says he doesn't need a clutch either. Okay, what didn't we like? Stark seem to have adapted ultra-lightweight plastic tubes from mountain bikes, where some brands say they are far more puncture resistant. They are up to 90% lighter than rubber tubes, but we suspect this is purely to save weight and swap to normal tubes until we hear good long-term reports about those plastic tubes. If you stop on a steep hill, the Stark Varg will roll backwards even with the regenerative braking set to maximum. If you have the left-hand rear brake, this should not be a problem. However, if you choose the rear foot brake, then you could be in trouble if your right foot is on the ground. The charger stand, it's taller than it needs to be. You really notice the weight of the Stark Varg when lifting, so it's a shame the stand isn't a little lower. Side stand, it's a bit shorter than average, so the Stark Varg leans a lot on flat ground. To date, those are our only complaints. If we find more issues, we will put them in the pinned first comment. What about potential issues? Some viewers say they won't put so much money into a motorbike brand that could disappear next year. Well, good news, Royal Enfield has invested 50 million euros into Stark, which is a good indication they will be around for years. Long-term reliability. Like any new brand, we can't be sure until hundreds of owners have hundreds of hours on their Stark Vargs. But all the early indications are very positive. The electric motor should be almost maintenance-free for 100 hours. The battery should last for many recycles. Will it? Only time will tell. It's bloody expensive, so we hope it lasts. Will the battery fail and burn down my house? Yes, there are occasional battery fires with electric vehicles. The majority seem to be in cheaper, lower quality brands. But manufacturers are now giving instructions and precautions for charging and storing. We will keep you posted if we hear about a Stark Varg failing. The sound of the electric motor, some love it, some hate it. We have no feelings either way. Once the whirring sound really kicks in, we are simply trying to stay on the bike. So, will the Stark Varg suit your average dirt rider? If the battery life isn't a problem, you don't mind the sound? Sure. It is one hell of a bike, and I will buy one when they are light enough for our slow technical riding. Interested in buying one? Do your research, try to get a test ride if possible, and remember the Flux Primo is also on the way. It promises to be even better than the Stark Varg in key aspects, such as weight and battery life. Check it out. So, have you ridden a Stark Varg? Do you own one? We are keen to hear your thoughts and opinions.